In this episode, we dive into the Harry Potter series with guest of the show, David Raiklen. Full speed ahead. Welcome to the Omega Beam number 87. I'm your host, Orrin Merton. Hopefully you've been enjoying your summer while staying safe. What we've got now is another in our series Rewatch episodes for you. So it turned out when Golden and I were talking about our favorite film series that I never finished watching the entire Harry Potter film series. I ended up stopping about halfway through. So you can stream those on the internet, and it seemed like a great idea to finish watching the series. Now, I love urban fantasies and monsters and magic and all the rest, so it was really a no-brainer to finish the series. And we were lucky enough to get our friend of the show and Potter film buff, David Raiklen, on board for a really great discussion about the impact and artistry of this film series. I should note that due to the circumstances at the moment, this was a Zoom discussion. We were not sitting in the same recording studio, so I can clean up the sound quality, but at a certain point, it is what it is. Also, because this is an in-depth discussion of the movies and their artistry, impact, all that, when we bring up the books or Fantastic Beasts or J.K. Rowling, it's just in that context of the movies. Okay, let's get to it. I am here with Golden and friend of the show, David Raiklen. Hello, David.
Hey, Darcy. Hey, Orrin. Hey, everybody.
So, in going over series that came out a number of years ago but are absolutely worth a rewatch, I figure we can't talk about incredibly successful and famous fantasy franchises without talking about the Harry Potter books and the movies that they spawn.
Well, you were saying rewatch. That for David and I, it would be rewatch. For you, you had told me that you thought that maybe you had seen the third, maybe the fourth, and you were pretty sure that you hadn't seen any of the films after that.
Exactly.
And since I was planning on going back and watching them again, I said, okay, well, why don't we go ahead and watch the last few films together?
Exactly. I was going to ask, so what are your experiences with the J.K. Rowling properties, books or movie? Had you read the books? Had you seen all the films before?
So, yeah, of course I saw the books. And, of course, I tried to, get into the series, even though it was, quote, a kid's series. Because you could just, it was like trying to ignore Star Wars when Star Wars came out. This was a world-changing phenomenon. You can't ignore it. You can't escape it. It's everywhere. So you may as well try and enjoy it. I was not a huge fan of the books, but I really enjoyed them and admired them. And the basic reason that I didn't become as huge a fan of the books as I am of the movies, which I adore, is that it took so long to read them because they were 500 or 1,000 pages long. Whereas, the movies, condensed all of that down.
Mm-hmm. I had not actually heard of the Harry Potter series until I think the third book was already out and the fourth one was soon to come out. And I think I picked up the first three and was done reading them within a month.
Wow.
And then I was working out at the Ren Fair on a Mother's Day weekend, and that Saturday I just was having a really bad day. And usually I stay overnight and work Sunday as well. And they just told me, why don't you just go home? So I stopped at Borders on my way home and picked up book 4, started reading it, probably went to sleep around 3 or 4 in the morning, got up, continued reading, went over to my aunt's house for dinner because it was Mother's Day, came home, continued reading, and finished it at like 4 a.m. the next day.
Wow.
And what she does, and you started to say that, these are children's books, but she writes on these multiple levels at the same time. So as I told Orrin, there is a one-line drop in book 4 where Harry and Hermione and Ron are in the Black House, and they're clearing out a cabinet. And they move this, they move that. One of them picks up a heavy locket, tries to open it, passes it to everyone else. None of them can open it. They pass it on. And it's just that, literally, it's only like 1 or 2 lines. That's it. But yet, at the end of book 6, when there's the locket, it's like, oh, I know where that locket's from. I know where that locket is. Because it was just this one line, and she's very good at putting those little clues in. So if you are a reader that likes those details, you're getting even more out of the story.
Oh, yes. And that's something that many adult writers can't quite pull off so well, is to have such a intricate structure that has a simple surface.
I really thought, watching the third movie, and, Sirius Black, I really thought...
By the way, doesn't she have, like, the best names?
Well,
like, call the school Hogwarts.
But a lot of her names have origins to them. I figured out Sirius, Dog Star. Okay, Sirius is the dog. Oren, not as familiar with astronomy. So he missed the whole Sirius Dog Star thing.
But if we're going to talk about Sirius Black for a moment, we have to talk about the 4th movie.
Oh, and that's Gary Oldman, right?
Yeah, Gary Oldman. Again, just amazing in everything he does. When Harry Potter has his trial in the 4th movie and they're walking out, this dog that looked for all purposes like a black Irish wolfhound.
You are in the wrong movie.
It wasn't movie 4. It was movie 5.
It's the beginning of movie 5.
Movie 5. All right, movie 5. Excuse me.
The beginning of movie 5, they're going to the train station. There's a dog walking with them. Oren gets very excited because he is sure it is a black Irish wolfhound.
I've always wanted a black Irish wolfhound. Our Irish wolfhound is amazing. He is the more traditional sort of silver gray. I saw this black wolfhound and decided at this very moment that had to be one of the absolute greatest things ever. We did actually find out later that, in fact, one of the foundation breeds into the Irish wolfhound is the Scottish deerhound. And so, in fact, it was not an Irish wolfhound. It was a black Scottish deerhound, which is even rarer than a Irish wolfhound, but still a very similar looking dog and absolutely amazingly gorgeous. So hats off to the production team for including a black Scottish deerhound in that movie, because it made the movie for me.
Oh, and how about Sirius Black's cousin, Bellatrix Lestrange? Isn't that such a wonderful name?
But played so well by
Helena Bonham Carter.
Helena Bonham Carter.
Yeah.
So
she does crazy very well.
She does do crazy well. So my experience.
We're talking about the movies. We're talking about the cream of British acting. All of the best actors in England are in that movie series.
Or it seems in some ways like just all of the actors, period. They probably employed a huge number of British actors. But my personal engagement with the Harry Potter series was quite different, because as it happens, at that moment in time, the late 90s, early 2000s, that was when I was just getting my rock project together, Ember After. So I was not seeing a lot of movies. I was not reading a lot of books. I was focused in other directions. So I did see the first movie, Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, and I thought it was just fine. I did see the second one, and I thought it was just fine.
Chamber of Secrets.
Chamber of Secrets. And I thought
which, again, comes into play in the last movie.
That is true. And it was absolutely fine. I saw the third one, and I remembered nothing except the presence of Cho. That was her name?
No, you didn't remember anything about the third one.
I didn't remember anything about the third one. It was the fourth one?
For the first reason, the fourth movie, he just remembers the character Cho.
That's the only thing I remember. I remember the character Cho. And I don't think I saw any of the others after that. So that's why I was interested in seeing them. For me, the first time.
Quite a bit. because the first three were either directed or directed and produced, or I mean, it's Chris Columbus and his vision for the first three movies.
Right.
All with the approval, the express and detailed step-by-step approval of J.K. Rowling. She is a very hands-on producer. And by very hands-on, I mean that before the movie could be shot, for each movie, she would get together with the writer and the director, and they would go over with her every page of the script and how they intended to shoot it. And she had to sign off on everything before they could go. Now, how many people get that kind of say?
You have to be that successful.
See, then the movies, the one that I think should have been maybe 2 parts was 4, because there was just so much more content in 4, and then that one could have been broken down into 2 movies.
Right. Well, that actually is an interesting challenge on another level. That as the series goes on, the series of the books, they became longer and substantially longer. So by the time we got to the 7th book, it had to be 2 movies because there was so much story there that they had to do it in 2 parts. And I don't know if you remember that was actually, kind of a daring phenomena that they were going to show you part 1 of the end of the movie and series and leave that on a cliffhanger.
Yeah.
And you'd have to wait a year to find out how it ended.
Yeah. Well, one of the things about the Harry Potter series that I really liked, and we talked about the acting. I think she did great with the casting. And you and Golden had already talked about the world building and creating the mythology and everything. And that, to me, that's my takeaway. The thing about the world that I loved so much, and I will compare this to my other one of my other favorite film franchise worlds, which is Star Wars, or universes, which is Star Wars, is that one of the things that immediately gripped people about Star Wars is that, unlike a lot of science fiction that had come before, the Star Wars universe looked lived in.
Yes.
Looked like there were, mythologies and life cycles and creatures and everything that you didn't know about, but they were there. And the people who lived in it knew about them because they lived in it. And that's one of the things that I loved about the Harry Potter series, is that the world building was amazing to me. As somebody who writes, fantasy fiction myself, just the world building, it's just amazing. And it's a masterclass. Everything was lived in. Everything looked like there were histories that you didn't know that were there, because it just had that level of sort of richness to it. As far as the actual story goes, and this is something I told Golden, just a personal thing, I've never been that excited about British boarding schools. So,
Yes.
As much as the sort of the final, that's maybe why I like the final 2 so much, is that they're out of school, is that there
was more action too.
Yeah, there were more action as well. So just, me being an action addict, I like that too. But I'm just not that into the schoolboy stuff. So that didn't move me quite as much as the basic story of Voldemort versus, the boy who lived. I mean, that to me is more gripping than the schoolboy story. But that's just me, and that's not, she was writing for a middle grade audience.
If you were 12, you would feel differently.
I totally get that, and I completely agree with you on that. That, I was over 30 when I was watching these for the first time, so certainly I was not thinking like a 12-year-old. And I bet if I was a 12-year-old, seeing sort of myself in the book would be one of the most exciting things, I think, and would make it that much more meaningful to me.
So the longest... Sorry, go ahead, David.
No, go ahead. Longest?
The longest book was Order of the Phoenix. This is the American editions, because the British editions were different type font and everything else. But the Order of the Phoenix was 870 pages.
That's a book.
So,
Well, that's like that's a magnum opus there.
Yeah.
and yet it is one of the shortest of the films.
Yeah, there's a lot of adaptation,
Yeah.
and I think that as someone who almost always prefers the book to the movies, the Harry Potter series is one of the few where, like the Marvel MCU, I really felt like I was in the wizarding world of Harry Potter come to life when I went to the movies. I didn't feel to me like they were trying to do their, Hollywood or, filmmaking thing to it. I felt like they were serving the story. That made everyone better because as brilliant as they were, they couldn't be more brilliant than the source material. So that was where the magic came from. Oh, and we need to talk about Alan Rickman's portrayal of Severus Snape.
Oh, and there will be spoilers. I'm just saying that right now.
I adore Alan Rickman in nearly everything I've ever seen him in. I think he does a marvelous job of playing Trent Reznor.
Yes. Well, he does. And, in many ways, his character is like the heart of the series.
Yes.
I guess it's one of those magical things that the Harry Potter series has more than one heart.
Yeah.
Because there's more than one central character. And that's supposed to not be possible, but it is.
Right.
I was married once before, and when the 6th book came out, I had to let my husband read it first. And I read it, and then the whole Locket thing and RAB, and I was like, oh, cool, I'm glad they're bringing the Locket back. Oh, yeah. And he's like, you know who RAB is? And then, to me, it was obvious. To me, it was absolutely obvious, but he got very upset with me when I knew who it was. And he also got very upset with me for saying that I believed that Snape was in love with Lily the entire time, and that he really was doing everything.
When did you figure that out?
Oh, it was, the signs were there from early on, especially in that book. But I was sure, and he was very upset with me, and he said, "Oh, she's only going to do that because that's what the fans want." I'm like, "No, she had this laid out." And if you go back and you watch the movies from the perspective that that he's protecting Harry in everything. There's a scene in the 3rd movie where they come out of the tree and Lupin's turning into the werewolf, and he puts his body in front of the kids. I mean, he's just very angry with himself for that happening. But with Harry, he does see a lot of James in him too, which is also frustrating.
Yes.
But he's always, it's always what he's doing, Oren kind of disagrees here, is out of love. He thinks it's out of selfishness because the fact that...
You have to be careful about spoilers here.
I already said there's going to be spoilers.
As a highly charged and ambiguous character, and you're never really sure what he's up to. Until the very end.
Well, by the end of the 6th book, I was pretty sure. I was pretty sure by the end of the 6th book that everything that he was doing was because of his love for Lily, and therefore loving Harry as an extension.
But part of Snape is clearly the main protagonist for Philosopher's Stone, and through Azkaban at least. And yes, the uber antagonist that is over the whole series is Voldemort. And the thing is that functionally he's not able to be the protagonist that the antagonist that the protagonists are interacting with, because for several very good reasons, we can't see him except
Yes.
for brief moments. The characters can't even speak his name for most of the movies. So even though he is the chief antagonist, I think that Snape functions as the antagonist that's actually on screen, that the characters are interacting for most of the movies.
And that's what I think she does so well with, is because you can believe that he is the villain, that he is the bad guy.
Right, he may not be the main bad guy, but he's the main bad guy that we know.
Right. Well, and that's
the unknown, super evil bad guy. Yeah, that's one of the brilliant things about this, right? Is that it's sort of like Darth Vader and the Emperor,
right?
Where, there's a bad guy who's plenty evil villain. We don't need more villain than that, and yet we know there's a villain who's even more villainous than that.
Right, and to me, that's what it was. We had this. Gold and I had this discussion that I agree that Snape did everything for love, and that he was protecting Harry because he was the last vestige and the reminder of whom he really loved. But I don't think that Snape was a good character. Now, he was good to the protagonist because it meant something to him personally, that he got something out of being good to him. But that in general, had there been no Harry, I don't think he would have been a noble character. He might have still wanted maybe vengeance on Voldemort for killing the woman he loved, but he would not have been a defender of society and of good morals based on whom he was as an individual. That's my personal opinion.
So that's where I disagree, because I feel like because of being bullied and the way he grew up, that he fell in with Voldemort. But when Lily is threatened, it wakes him up. That's not really the way that he wants to have power, attain power, and who he wants to be.
Yes, well, also it's that his character is so brilliant and sarcastic, and Alan Rickman it excels at doing that. I mean, it's really like a masterpiece of acting, to play this brilliant and all-knowing character who, on some level, is insufferable, but on another level is absolutely necessary for everyone to survive.
Right. Well, and that's the thing. He manages to, even when he's being dark and dastardly, he manages to always be sympathetic and compelling at the same time, which is
he's an
not easy. Yeah, it's not an easy thing to do. And the fact that we can have discussions about what his motivations were and what his character may have been under the actions, which we can all see and agree on, I think speaks volumes both for the depth of the writing and the depth of the acting.
Yeah, he gives them the assignment in third book that they're supposed to research werewolves, and he does it expressly to see if anyone will figure out that that's what Lupin is.
Yes. Well, let's see. He was professor of potions or something like that.
Yes.
What was it?
No, he's professor. He is the professor of potions for most of it, but what he wants is the dark arts spot.
Yes.
So when Harry gets a book in the 6th movie, and it's the Half-Blood Prince, and there's all of these notes about potions and how to do even better potions, it's not surprising to find out that Snape is the Half-Blood Prince because he's a potions master.
Yeah.
Yes.
And there's all of these, like, in the 4th book, he accuses them of maybe brewing Polyjuice potion again. And that's, one of your other hints as to what's really going on with the other antagonist in that movie.
Yeah.
There's a lot of just really subtle.
We haven't talked much about the spells, but that's one of my favorite things about the books and about the movies, and also continuing into Fantastic Beasts, is all of the brilliant spells, both the words that you use, to invoke the magic, and then what the magic does.
Mm-hmm.
This is some of the coolest magic that anybody's ever imagined. Like having a newspaper that has moving pictures in it, because there's a spell that makes the picture come.
Or even the photos.
Right.
Yes. Having like Lumos, where you can have a flashlight.
Right.
And again,
a little spell.
It goes back to the words. Luminary, enlighten, reducto, make smaller. She uses the actual words for the spells. Confundus, confusion. She's using.
Yeah, it's in that sense.
Which is,
it's children's literature that's designed to both educate and entertain.
Yes, it's enriching. Right. It's enriching the reader's vocabulary because it's reminding them about these different words that mean the same thing.
Sure, and I would add to that. I agree with both of you, and I would add to that from a consistency point of view. One of the other ways in which J.K. Rowling and the filmmakers have created a world, have built a magical world that is so much better than a lot of them. And now I will use Star Wars critically, is I think one of the great things that J.K. Rowling does so well, and is not easy, is that there is a total consistency in how magic works in her world. And it really lends itself to that rich development. It feels like it has been this way, it has always been this way, and people can manipulate it, people can expand on it, but it's always there. And I will give Tolkien and Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings movie credit, because they don't have the depth, I think, that J.K. Rowling does in magic, but it is the same. Lord of the Rings is also a completely consistent world, and Tolkien, of course, classic world builder. In this case, I think, is somewhere Star Wars really blew it, in that the Force, it sort of changed in its power set and in what it was, depending on the specific film. In one movie, the Force is nothing but a invisible sort of spirituality that binds everything. But then J.J. Abrams comes along and they get new powers that they didn't have before. Or then the prequels come along and it's all midichlorians. It's based on what you've got in your cells. And it seems like... And then what was the Last Jedi comes around, and suddenly you have additional Force powers that never existed before. And so it seems like the Force was whatever they needed it to be for that particular film, whereas J.K. Rowling did such a great job of building a magical universe that you really feel like it exists, and there's a consistency to it.
And the Black family, for the most part, are a lot of stars. Bellatrix, Sirius, Regulus, and even though Narcissa is not, her son's name is Draco.
Yes,
so it's carrying on that star tradition that's in the Black family.
Right. There's all of these different realms of knowledge that she draws on and uses as an element to develop a particular character or a particular place or a particular family, and it just shows how well read and how knowledgeable the author is.
Yeah.
They can say, all right, the way I'll make this part of my world consistent is I'll draw from this part of science or literature or whatever, and that'll be their thing. And then some other part of the world, they'll draw on another part of science and literature. And like I said, it's just this like banquet of all these different things. And
you put the words Diagon Alley together and you get diagonally.
Yes. Yeah, it took me forever to figure that out because everyone was so careful to pronounce it Diagon Alley.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, you have the one opening where Harry leaves at the beginning of the third movie and you have the night bus. Mm-hmm. And, you read that and you wonder, how are they going to bring that to screen? And they just, you have the driver who can barely see in this shriveled head giving him directions.
yeah, talking about
Well, that
the
sequence
effects
was
again.
harrowing and hilarious.
Yeah, and using that as a vaulting point. The effects were great. All the movies, as you said, or at least after the first three, were done by different people, but the level of effects were always at the very, very highest level.
And they hold up today.
Yeah, they hold up today. They look like any modern movie. And in that kind of magical fantasy, that's when you really need the great effects, because you really have to sell it. Otherwise, it's going to look cartoony. And they really sell it.
And that's something that I can't really say about any other fantasy movie. The fantasy elements all tend to look cartoony, but not in Harry Potter. They look like they're part of the real world. And I think that that's something that's probably worth studying, is why do these effects feel so real? Because they can't do them in camera like Christopher Nolan does in his movies. They have to be done because, there's no dragons, there's no, glowing orbs of light that lift you up into the sky. I mean, that all has to be done with effects, but something makes them look real, and they look even more real to my eye than the Marvel ones, which are probably, up at the top. But still, they don't feel like they're real.
It's interesting with the Marvel movies, because I do think
Iron Man's armor feels real to me. That feels like a real thing.
I was going to say
so it's not like they can't get there. They can get there.
Yeah, and I agree, and I think that's the thing about the Marvel movies, is that there's a lack of consistency. That they'll spend all their budget on making the Iron Man suit fantastic, or on Samuel L. Jackson's de-aging, or whatever. But then other effects in other scenes kind of suffer. So, I think some of it is budget related, but I think also some of it is
they're doing so much.
Yeah, it's they obviously, with the Harry Potter movies, they made the not just the budgetary choice, but the priority choice, that they were going to prioritize that. Now, talking about consistency, I think one of the things, and I already said this to Golden, I think that the Harry Potter theme that was introduced in the first movie, and some of the themes that are introduced as characters introduced in the Harry Potter movies, are really excellent. But overall, I don't think the scores are as consistently amazing as they are in some other franchises. I think some of them are really good.
The first
three are consistently amazing.
I agree.
And there's an incredible story that almost sounds like a magic act of its own. The first Harry Potter movie came out in 2001. Mm-hmm. And some may remember that this was so highly anticipated that they came out with their teaser in 2000. And here's the story of that teaser. They got the actors together, and they did visual effects on things that they hoped would be in the movie, but they didn't know because the movie hadn't been made yet. And they approached John Williams to write a theme. They had no footage. They asked him, could he write a theme that would be suitable for promoting the trailer, for promoting the movie, before he'd seen the movie, before they had a finalized script. He just based it on the books. Mm-hmm. And he wrote Hedwig's theme, which is the one musical element that's in all of the movies. Uh-huh. So that's really kind of a magic trick, is to create an element that's going to be essential to all of the movies before you've seen any of the movies.
Hey, anyone can do it. It's going to be John Williams.
And, he continued that ability to make the magical world seem real and inevitable while evolving it. And, he's the one who took it from it being kids to being more like teen appropriate. And, in A Prisoner of Azkaban, he actually brings in some really interesting medieval musical elements to help portray Diagon Alley. So it's actually some of his most creative scores. And it turns out, the live-to-picture movement that's been going on now for, 5-6 years?
Right, and is on hold currently as we all shelter in place.
Really on hold. But, one of the most popular ones is Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone live to picture.
Okay.
And I highly recommend it. It's really amazing to watch that movie on a big screen and hear the music played by a symphony orchestra in the same room as you. It's really quite magical.
Yeah, I think it might have been. Was it movie 5? I think that. Was that the one? 3?
I think there was 3 recently. That was at Segerstrom.
No, I was actually going to say that I think when we were watching them, I think it was movie 5 when I turned to you and said, I don't think the music was quite as memorable for this one.
Yeah, it's not. That's because they started to have different composers.
Yeah.
They ended up with Alexandre Desplat, and he's a brilliant composer. But the thing is that you could just tell that all the composers were intimidated by John Williams.
Well,
they were,
understandably so.
They didn't push things far. They kind of understated things.
Mm-hmm.
Because if they went to, okay, we're going to have a big character theme with a spectacular orchestration, they knew that they were going toe-to-toe with John Williams, and they didn't want to do that. Because...
Yeah.
Well, you're definitely going to fail if you don't give it 100%.
Yeah.
Right, and so that's why, is because I really think that they were, and within the interviews, you kind of got that, sort of thing, well, I'm not John Williams, so I'm going to do it differently. And yeah, that's fine, but you also have to go for broke, because, that's what it takes to make something great, is you can't hold back or be cautious.
Yeah.
You have to say, all right, I'm going to prepare as best I can and give this the absolute best shot. And if I fail, then so what? But, in this context, they can't say so what, because then they'll say, okay, I'll be humiliated.
Yeah, exactly.
Because there's already somebody who's done it better than you. So,
yeah. So getting to the sort of whole franchise, I think we'd all agree that this is absolutely worth a rewatch. If you haven't seen it, it's certainly worth a watch. And remember, I'm saying this is someone who is not all that interested in schoolboy stuff, but still, it's worth a watch. And I would say that if you have kids who've never seen this, maybe teenage kids.
Well, she specifically did it so that the first movie is meant for 10-year-olds.
Right.
Then the second movie is meant for 11-year-olds. Mm-hmm. So she actually gauged it so that it would be appropriate for the age level of the child. Right.
In the publishing world, we would say it goes from middle grade to YA, from middle grade to young adult.
Yeah, and there's no question that Deathly Hallows is a YA that's kind of comparable to the Hunger Games, really.
Exactly. Yeah, it's definitely at that level.
So the movies have an evolution.
Mm-hmm.
That's, hats off to Daniel Radcliffe and, Emma Watson. Emma's become a movie star in her own right.
Yeah.
It's not easy to do, to graduate from being a child star to being an adult star.
Daniel Radcliffe is still trying. And we've had...
I'm rooting for him. I think he can get there.
Well, he's had a couple... He's been on a TBS television series for a couple years now called Miracle Worker. Mm-hmm. And he's been good in that.
And it was the third movie that was at Segerstrom Performing Arts Center in 2017.
Ah, gotcha. So yeah, and the guy who played...
They did live music with the movie. I didn't go.
Was any of the actual cast members there? Because then I would probably, just get starstruck.
The guy who played Draco, Tom Felton. He, for a season, was on The Flash. And was very good in that.
Yes. I mean,
although he doesn't have as big a mountain to climb in terms of expectation.
Well, he has the trying to get rid of the Draco Malfoy image.
Right.
He's so good at being unlikable.
And then, of course, Jason Isaacs, who plays his dad, was in the first season of Star Trek Discovery and was absolutely fantastic. And
then you had your Dumbledore switch, which actually I think was better placed with as much as our first Dumbledore was great. I think that Michael Gambon just brought something else to it that it needed.
Well, yeah, Michael Gambon was a better Dumbledore. Does that make sense?
Oh, yes. Also,
Maggie Smith. I mean,
I wonder how. I remember at some point, J.K. Rowling said, and this becomes clearer in the Fantastic Beasts movie, which we're not getting into yet, but Dumbledore is a gay character, and
Richard Harris
is very homophobic. So, that would have been one hell of a thing for him to have been around to find out.
Richard Harris said that the only reason that he hates sequels, and he said the only reason why he did Chamber of Secrets is that his children begged him. And he said didn't want to do it, and they were the ones that wasn't the producers. He said it was his own family that twisted his arm until he agreed to do the second movie.
And since we have discussed Batman recently, we should also speak to the fact that movie 4 was Robert Pattinson's debut for really starting to be acknowledged.
Yeah, he's going to be the new Batman, right?
And he was. I enjoyed his character and his portrayal quite a bit in the movie.
Yes.
Cedric, was that the character?
Yes, Cedric Diggory.
Yeah. So
another great name, Cedric Diggory.
Yeah, well, very very British name. So definitely, we would say go ahead and also if you're at home and you want to kill a lot of time. I mean, there's a lot of hours of movie to watch.
Yes, and then there's behind the scenes features and all that, which are really interesting because it's a huge, complex production.
One of the other characters that I absolutely love is Luna.
Yes, Luna
Lovegood. She's just a fun. When the movies start to get dark, all of a sudden there's this light that's just dropped in, and she kind of just lightens everything up.
And everyone loves Hagrid, right? I don't know.
Oh, everybody loves Hagrid. You have to love Hagrid. He's just fun.
So
and Dobby. What about Dobby?
Well, I'm okay with Dobby.
I know one of my friends. She has when they go and do dressing up as the Potterverse. She has a costume for Dolores Umbridge.
Okay.
That she wears.
Oh, and we somehow have managed to talk about these 8 movies and the 7 books and the spin-offs and Quidditch. Every movie has a terrific Quidditch match that's some of the best action sequences.
Just remember, though, that for Oren, every sport is sports ball.
Yes.
So he doesn't actually get very excited about anything that is sportsy.
No.
And he doesn't see the point in Quidditch really at all.
No.
And he decided that he was going to make a very phallic observation regarding them holding their broomsticks. And I said, no, I've never thought of it that way, and I'm going to continue to not think of it that way.
That's right.
Quidditch doesn't do it for me. It's sort of like, I don't know. It's just it's extraneous to me. I realize it's a thing, and a lot of people love it, and that's fine. Enjoy it, but it's not my thing.
How do you say it's not your thing? But how do you play Quidditch? You play it with a ball.
You use the thing that goes into the thing, and then you fly around.
You fly around. How do you fly around?
There is a very instrumental character that we haven't discussed yet.
See, I think Oren knows more about this than he's letting on. I think if you watch those movies, you know the rules of Quidditch.
Oh, I don't think he does. I honestly don't.
What do they call the ball with the wings?
What my students call me when I tell on them.
It's not a squeaker, is it?
No, it's what my students call me when I tell on them.
Mean?
No, they call me a snitch.
Snitch.
And I said, wait a minute. I'm golden? I'm a snitch? I'm a golden snitch. I'm worth a lot of points.
So basically, I know you have to...
Yes, I'm a very good thing.
I know you have to hit the snitch into the ring. You don't hit the snitch into the ring.
No. That's how you can bypass all the rules.
Is it Boffle? Is it the Boffle?
Mm-hmm.
The Boffle goes... Or is the Boffle the one that moves?
the quaffle is the thing that, okay, Quidditch has three.
Yeah, I don't even actually know the names of the balls.
There's a quaffle, a bludger, and the golden snitch.
The bludger is the one that tries to hit you, and the quaffle is the one that needs to go through the rings. And then you have a stick, because the beaters are the ones that try to keep the bludger away from the other players. And then you run around with the quaffle, trying to throw the quaffle through the rings. Meanwhile, the two other guys look around for the golden snitch.
And on that note...
No, we have not discussed Neville.
Neville Longbottom.
Because it comes out in the books, and they discuss in the books, Lord Voldemort did not know which boy. He did not know if the prophecy referred to Neville Longbottom or Harry Potter. Something influences him to choose Harry and to make that decision. It's still, in the end, Neville is instrumental in taking down the Dark Lord.
Right.
By killing Nagini.
This is true.
So, it's still... they don't do a good job, I think, in the movies of really going into also the fact that the whole reason that the divination teacher is still at Hogwarts is so that Dumbledore can keep her protected, because she's the one that did the original prophecy.
Yeah, they didn't explain that in a way that I picked up on. So thanks for reminding me.
No, yeah, she's the one that originally did the prophecy, and I don't think she even knows it. Mm-hmm. Because she's not aware, when she's saying her prophecy, what the prophecy is.
So people who have not seen the Harry Potter movies or read the Harry Potter books, when you want to see the Harry Potter movies, it will be beneficial.
Read the books first.
If you don't, it will be beneficial to have someone next to you who can whisper in your ear throughout the entire thing exactly what the background is that was missed.
Okay, I have to jump in. The movies are designed so you can start at the first one and go through them all, and that will make perfect sense to you. You don't need to read the book.
There will be a lot of unanswered questions. Like, how did Lupin know that the Marauders map always tells the truth? Mm-hmm. That is not ever answered directly in the movie.
Right, but that's a pretty detailed question. So if you're that observant that you notice that detail, then yeah, you should probably read the books.
Well, then you might notice that the map is made by Moony, Padfoot, Prongs, and Wormtail. Mm-hmm. And you might be able to make that connection as to who those four people are. And, the whole reason that the map wasn't used for a very long time was because it was, taken away from someone years and years ago, and they filched it out of Filch's office. Is it Filch? Was that the...
You tell me. I don't remember anybody's name, so
was it Filch?
It's all good.
Oh, and then there's, just to mention, there's joyful, happy scenes in these movies that are just a pleasure to watch, like Christmas at Hogwarts. Those scenes are just a delight, and it brings out the kid in everyone, and they're beautiful. So if you want a feel-good movie, these pictures also have those elements in it, too.
Yes.
There are definitely feel-good elements in it, absolutely. Well, thank you, David. Thank you, Golden.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much for inviting me to a wonderful, far-ranging discussion of the cinematic universes.
And that's it for this episode. You can find the show notes at theomegabeam.com/87. If you liked this episode, please leave a review in the Apple Podcasts app or wherever you listen to podcasts. It's these reviews that help other people who like this stuff find our podcast. If you have any comments or suggestions, please drop us a line at info@theomegabeam.com. Be good to yourselves and each other, and we'll catch you next time.